Derrick Henry now is in 10th place all-time in rushing yards in the NFL with 12,892. So congratulations to him. Hello, welcome to NFL Top 10's for Monday. Man, we had some good games Saturday and Sunday. Big games too. I mean, there were some that didn't mean as much, but the really big games actually turned out to be pretty entertaining for the most part. So we're going to talk about some of those games today. We'll see how far we get. We'll start with the Saturday games, go to some of the Sunday games. We'll see how far we get. But man, pretty interesting. And with the wrap up of the Monday or the Sunday night game, now we know what pretty much the schedule for next Sunday and when the games are going to be played and so forth. But it was fun to watch the different games. At least the games I watched were all good. The ones I got to watch in entirety. Let's get started on this last Monday of 2025. Wow. One more week of NFL football, and then we start the playoffs. Man, I can't wait. Mostly because usually I don't care as much because the Jaguars are not in the playoffs, but this year they are. That was one of the big games too from Sunday. But we'll start with the games on Saturday, man. And we have as our first game the Houston Texans going into LA to play the Chargers, and Houston came out with a win again. It's just amazing that they did. And it put a lot of pressure on the Jaguars because that put Houston right up there with another win. I think they've won 8 in a row now, just keeping the pressure on the Jacksonville Jaguars to win. So in this game between Houston Texans, who are now 11-5, as are the Los Angeles Chargers, 11-5, this is a big game in a lot of ways. Like I said, for Houston trying to win the division title, putting the pressure on the Jaguars. But the fact that the Chargers lost gave the Denver Broncos the division title. So Denver was very appreciative. They had their own tough game against Kansas City. Now in this game for Houston, C.J. Stroud, 16 for 28, 242 yards, 2 touchdowns, but also 2 interceptions. Was not a good game for him, really, but they ended up winning it anyway. And looking up here for the box scores, let's get that. I want to see this game on a different. I'm looking at the wrong week. That's why. I want to look at this game on a different website because they have, not only do they have the scores, but they also put the players' quarterback rating. All right, so like I said, this was a game Houston pulled out to the lead 14-3 at halftime, but then Chargers came back and they had a good chance to win this game. They didn't. Houston had more net yards, 362 to 275. Did pretty well on the ground. In the air, like I said, not so well. With Stroud's numbers, he had an 80 quarterback rating. He had 244 yards and 8.7 yards per attempt, but that was really triggered by the fact that he had a 75-yard touchdown pass. He was not sacked, though they pressured him a lot. I'm surprised that he had no sacks because he was having to dump the ball fairly frequently. Now for Justin Herbert, not much better. 21 completions on 32 attempts for 236 yards, 7.4 yards per attempt, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. He was sacked, though, 5 times. His quarterback rating was 84.9, so just a little bit better. In the rushing department, Marks had a good game. 19 carries, 71 yards. It's only 3.74 yards a carry, but they did make an effort. This Jawan Jordan, who played a lot last week, had a good game, had 8 carries for 36 yards, so 4.5 yards a carry there. Now for the Chargers, not so good. Justin Herbert led the team in rushing with 6 carries on 37 yards. Marion Hampton, 14 carries for 29 yards. That's just over 2 yards a carry. He did have a touchdown, though. Honestly, they couldn't run it, and they didn't. Honestly, I think they could have tried more to run it. They just didn't. 22 carries, 74 yards for them. Nico Collins for Houston. Nobody had more than 3 receptions for Houston. Nico Collins had 3 for 57. Jalen Noel had 3 for 54. One was a really nice reception for a touchdown, 43 yards long, and that was the touchdown. Jaden Higgins had 2 catches, 85 yards, and that's where that was the 75-yard touchdown pass. I mean, he was wide open. Good play, and that's where Houston looked like they were going to walk away with this. 2 quick touchdowns in the beginning of the game, and right there in the first quarter, it looked, oh man, this is bad for the Chargers. But the Chargers then kind of got their act together and held on, but not enough to catch up. Now, in the receiving department for the Chargers, Omarion Hampton did have 8 catches for 31 yards. So by far the top receiver as far as receptions go. Quentin Johnson had 5 catches for 98 yards. That's really good. And then Aronde Gatson, 3 catches, 32 yards, but he dropped some passes they needed. Honestly, the Chargers made too many mistakes in this game. They were in it. I mean, they gave up the long touchdowns, but just mistakes that they made. Drops by the one I definitely remember was the Gatson drop, which I think caused them to have to kick a, do a punt. And then not only that, but Cameron Dicker. So the number 1 kicker in percentage, hadn't missed a kick under 40 yards, misses one from 30-something yards away. And he missed an extra point. That right there was 4 points. They lose this game by 4 points. So they could have been tied near the end of the game, or at least at the end, the Chargers only having to go in for a field goal versus a touchdown. That extra point was costly. They lose by 4 points. That's right there, the field goal and the extra point. What a big difference that made. That was the killer for the Chargers. Now, let's look at some numbers. For Houston, C.J. Stroud had 2 touchdowns. So he now has 60 touchdown passes for the Houston Texans, which is good enough to put him into 3rd all-time in passing touchdowns for that team. Now, tackles for loss, Will Anderson continues to be impressive. He had another tackle for loss. Like I said, he's only been on this team since 2023, but he's got 44 tackles for loss now, which moved him out of a tie with his current coach, D'Amico Ryans. Isn't that funny? D'Amico Ryans was tied with Will Anderson for 5th all-time in tackles for loss for the Houston Texans at 43. Will Anderson got 1 more, so he's now 5th alone, and his coach, the current coach for Houston, is now in 6th. That's pretty interesting that you have the coach right there. I mean, this coach was playing for Houston. He left the team in 2011. So now, 15 years later, he's already head coach. He's been a head coach. Now for the Chargers, Justin Herbert sacked another 5 times in this game. That hurt them too. But he was going into this game tied for Phillip Rivers, who, as you probably know, has been playing for the Indianapolis Colts again. Phillip Rivers held the record for the Chargers with 49 sacks, which he did in 2012, 14 years ago. Well, Justin Herbert was tied with him. 5 more sacks puts him in the all-time lead by himself with 54. times he's been sacked this year for the Chargers. And there's still one more game to go. So that's not a category you really want to be at the top of. All right, now Cameron Dicker. He did get 4 points in this game. He did have a field goal extra point, but man, he really hurt the team here in this category. But Cameron Dicker, with those 4 points, moves into 7th all-time in scoring for the Los Angeles Chargers with 502 points total. Keenan Allen's number 10 with 388. But Cameron Dicker he passed Lance Allworth, who played in the 60s. Great player for the Chargers way back. But yeah, 502 points for Cameron Dicker. Next game up. This is the Baltimore Ravens and the Green Bay Packers. This is another huge game with all kinds of significance going into the game. Baltimore absolutely had to win this game to have a chance to play for the division title against the Pittsburgh Steelers, which they will now do because Pittsburgh managed to lose to the Cleveland Browns. So now they're set for a big rematch on Sunday. I think they have some games on Saturday, and they were setting up the schedule, and I can't remember if that game's on Saturday or Sunday, but they will be playing each other, the Ravens and the Steelers, for the division title. But in this game, Baltimore Ravens just kept handing the ball to Derrick Henry, which was the absolute right thing to do. They pulled out to a big lead and just kind of kept on the pressure on Green Bay. Green Bay did not have their starting quarterback. And Jordan Jacobs, he just hasn't been playing well. He's been hurt. Just hasn't looked right. Now, in this game, it was a lot of yards. Green Bay's defense now is not as good as it was. So Baltimore had 414 yards. Green Bay had 363. But rushing yards for Baltimore, 307. That's amazing. To 79 for Green Bay. 307 yards rushing in a single game. Now, most of those, 200 plus of those were Derrick Henry. Both teams did really well on third downs. Third down, Baltimore 10 for 14. That's 71%. Anything at 50% is pretty decent. Green Bay 3 of 6 for 50%. But they went for it on fourth twice and didn't get it. Now, in this game, because of the way Baltimore ran the ball and could not be stopped, 30 first downs for Baltimore, had the ball for over 40 minutes to less than 20 for Green Bay. Twice as much time of possession. This is no wonder the Green Bay defense probably just wore themselves right down. Now, like I said, in this game, the quarterbacks weren't bad. Tyler Huntley's playing for Baltimore instead of Lamar Jackson. He had 16 completions on 20 attempts. That's only 4 incompletions. Only 107 yards, though. But really, he was just kind of breaking up some of the runs that Derrick Henry had. Had 1 touchdown, no interceptions, only sacked once, had a quarterback rating of 105.6. Not bad. And Malik Willis filling in for Love. 18 completions on 21 attempts, only 3 incompletions for Malik Willis, 288 yards passing, 13.7 yards per attempt. That's extremely high number. 1 touchdown, no interceptions, only sacked once, had a quarterback rating of 134.6. They were talking on the show, on the game, and I believe it. I don't see Malik Willis being a backup after this year. He's put up some pretty good numbers. He can run around. He passes on the run fairly well. If he's up for grabs, somebody's going to take a chance on Malik Willis as a starting quarterback. There's too many teams that need a quarterback. Now, in this game, Derrick Henry, we'll be talking about him a lot. 36 carries in this game, 216 yards, 6 yards a carry, and 4 touchdowns. He rushed for 14 first downs. Tyler Huntley had 8 carries himself for 60 yards, so he did an amazing Lamar Jackson impression. Then Keaton Mitchell coming in, filling in for Derrick Henry, had 9 carries for 31 yards. So a total of 53 carries for 307 yards, 5.8 yards a carry, and 4 touchdowns. That's just a ton. And Green Bay didn't do bad, but this again was Malik Willis. He did everything he could to help the team stay in the game. Like I said, only 3 incompletions, 288 yards passing, led the team in rushing, 9 carries for 60 yards, 22-yard touchdown run. He had 2 touchdown runs. I mean, Josh Jacobs, 4 carries for 3 yards. Like I said, probably it would have been better just not to play him. They only ran the ball 17 times, meaning Malik Willis had over half the carries in this game. Just not part of their game. Now for Baltimore, Mark Andrews, 4 catches for 28 yards. Zay Flowers, 4 catches for 30 yards and a touchdown. And then that was it, really. I mean, Isaiah Likely, the other tight end, 3 catches for 27 yards. Really not much going on. Only 16 completions in the game. Spread it out among quite a few players. Nothing big. Now for Green Bay, Christian Watson, 5 catches, 113 yards, and a touchdown. So big game there for him. Aiden Reed, 4 catches, 41 yards. And then Romeo Doubs, 3 catches, 62 yards. And everybody else had just 1 catch for a total of 19 receptions in this game. All right, you ready to hear about Derrick Henry? I mean, this guy's just incredible. You know, before I get into these numbers, I'm thinking about next week's game. He carried the ball, like I said, 36 times. Now he's got to be ready for a game next week as well. We'll see. Hopefully he's ready to go. But he racked up 216 yards. So for the Baltimore Ravens themselves this season, Derrick Henry went into this game in 8th spot all time in rushing yards in a single season. Well, with 216, he now has 1,469, which is good enough to jump him from 8th all the way up into 3rd. And that's as far as he'll get because he has the number 2 rushing total with 1,921 yards. So he's more than 400 yards away from that. And Jamal Lewis holds the all-time Baltimore Ravens rushing yards record in a single season with 2,066. But a huge game for Derrick Henry. Then touchdowns in a single season. With 4 more in this game, he went into this game tied for 4th with Ray Rice and Willis McGahee with 12. With 4 more, he jumps into a tie that he set last year with 16 rushing touchdowns in a season with 16. So he matched his record of last year with 1 more game to go, so he could definitely break his own season record in rushing touchdowns for the Baltimore Ravens. All right, we'll switch away from him for a minute and look at Zay Flowers. Had 4 catches. He went in this season in the 8th spot all time for the Baltimore Ravens in receptions in a single season with 78. Got 4 more, so with 82, he jumps up to 6th, from 8th to 6th place with 82, passing Derek Mason and Steve Smith Sr. He has a good chance to catch Derek Mason, who had 86. He only needs 4 more for that. I mean, we'll see if he can make it. Boy, the Baltimore Ravens only have 2 players, Mark Andrews and Derek Mason, who have 100 receptions. I was talking about this last week because there was a team with only 1. And there's a team that we'll look at with nobody. No one's ever had 100 receptions for that team. All right, let's move on. Now, for the Baltimore Ravens in total touchdowns, well, Mark Andrews has led this category. He has 57, which is the most ever for Baltimore Ravens. Lamar Jackson has 35, which is good enough for tie for 5th. But Derrick Henry with 4 more jumps up into 7th place, right behind Lamar Jackson with 34 total touchdowns for Derrick Henry to move into 7th place all time in that category of all touchdowns. Now, total points, Derrick Henry again. He got 24 points in this game, 4 touchdowns. Impressive. He came into the game in 11th place all time for the Ravens in total points. Well, with 24 more, he jumps up into just 10th, actually. Knocked Torrey Smith off of this list, and now he is in 10th place. Derrick Henry is with 204 points. Lamar Jackson has 212, and Mark Andrews has 348 to be in third spot. Those are 3 active players on this top 10 list. No kicker at this point for them on this list. Derrick Henry again in the NFL all time. It's been a while since a player has been able to make it. Actually, Frank Gore is the last player to make it into the top 10 all-time in rushing yards in the NFL. Frank Gore is third. He's one of the quietest guys on this list as far as racking up this amount of yards. But Derrick Henry came into this game in 11th spot. And with 216 yards, he knocks Tony Dorsett off of the all-time rushing yards top 10 list. So Derrick Henry now is in 10th place all-time in rushing yards in the NFL with 12,892. So congratulations to him. That's a major achievement. Of all the running backs, he's now in the top 10. Probably he's going to have to another year because Eric Dickerson is in 9th with 13,259. So Derrick Henry needs, just 350 yards or so. That's not going to happen, but very impressive. If he plays again next year with about 13,000 yards, he could move up into the top, up to maybe 6th if he gets 1,000 plus yards. Emmitt Smith holds the record all time with 18,355. Pretty difficult number to reach. I mean, Walter Payton's second with 16,726. So a good, 1,600 yards almost behind him. But Derrick Henry, major achievement. And he did it again in rushing touchdowns. So in the NFL all-time in rushing touchdowns, he went into the game in 5th behind Adrian Peterson. Derrick Henry had 118, but he got 4 more to pass Adrian Peterson to move into 4th all-time in rushing touchdowns with 122. Adrian Peterson had 120. Next up for him, and a chance to catch him this with one more game to go, is Marcus Allen in 3rd with 123. Derrick Henry is 4th place all-time in rushing touchdowns in the NFL with 122. What an impressive career he's had, and he looks so good. Here we're talking about a guy, people are questioning his age, and here he is at the end of the season. He's been putting up these big numbers the last several games of the season. So just very impressive. Started off kind of slow. He had the first game of the year was big, and then it seemed to peter off. And some of it had to do with, you'd look at the game and you'd say, how did Derrick Henry only carry the ball 9 to 12 times or something like that? That was a criticism of the coaching staff there. Now, rushing touchdowns, again, Emmitt Smith holds the record with 164. That is a big number. I don't know if Derrick Henry could catch that. LaDainian Tomlinson is 2nd with 145. So he's a good 23. That's 2 seasons away. And, it just all depends on if Derrick Henry continues to play. He definitely looks like he's good enough to play next year at what he's doing right now. All right. That was a huge game for Derrick Henry. I mean, this game was all Derrick Henry. They said, here, you help us win this game, and he did it. Baltimore Ravens winning at 41-24. All right, next game. Seattle Seahawks going into Carolina. This was a big chance for Carolina at the time, you thought anyway. But again, Tampa Bay Buccaneers lost. Carolina Panthers were not able to handle the Seattle Seahawks like they did the Rams when Rams came into Carolina. They beat them, but Seattle, no way they were going to let that happen. Seattle wins this game 27-10. Handled them pretty well. In fact, Carolina didn't score a touchdown until the fourth quarter. And this game really was actually close the first half. I mean, it was 3-3 at halftime, so not much of a game. But then Seattle put the pressure on them and racked up 24 points in the second half to pull away. Now, in this game, Seattle kind of doubled them in everything, almost. First downs, 19-10 for Carolina. Net yards, 288 for Seattle, only 139 for Carolina, doubled them there. And here's a huge stat. Seattle, third down efficiency, 9 third down conversions on 16 attempts for 56% versus the Carolina Panthers, 1 third down conversion on 11 tries for a 9%. That's the game right there. You can't convert third downs, and Carolina went for it on fourth down 5 times, only managed to get a fourth down conversion on 2 of those for 40%. So really not good. 3 conversions on 16 tries on third and fourth down. Really a poor percentage there. And time of possession, 34 plus yards for Seattle, less than 26 for Carolina. So Seattle really held this game and kind of just controlled it overall. Either quarterback was impressive. Sam Darnold, 18 completions on 27 attempts for 147 yards. Only 5.4 yards per attempt, 1 touchdown, 1 interception, sacked 3 times. Quarterback rating of 77.2. Kind of average for him. Bryce Young, 14 completions on 24 attempts for 54 yards. Now that is terrible. 54 yards, 2.2 yards an attempt. That's one of the lowest numbers I've seen all year. No touchdowns, 1 interception. Quarterback rating of 45.8. So this is a game where the Seattle defense came out and put on a good display. Also, they ran the ball fairly well, so there wasn't a lot of need for Sam Darnold to be that great. No comeback needed from him this game. Zach Charbonnet had 18 carries for 110 yards, 6.1 yards a carry, 2 touchdowns. Kenneth Walker, 15 carries for 51 yards, 3.4 yards a carry. Charbonnet really looked good. If you have fantasy, Kenneth Walker last week looked good, and then so you think, all right, nope, you just don't know. I in my fantasy league, I never want to have Charbonnet or Walker because you don't know who is going to be the star of the game each week. It's just not set. Now for Carolina Panthers, Rico Dowdle did all right, 12 carries, 59 yards, 4.92 yards per carry. Bryce Young was second with 9 carries for 27 yards. That's 3 yards a carry. And Chuba Hubbard only had 4 carries for 12 yards. They ran the ball okay, 26 carries for 99 yards. Just, after the 14 points that Seattle racked up in the third quarter, that took the running game away from Carolina, and they had to go to the passing game, which obviously there was no passing game with only 14 completions. They just dominated by being able to run it. They just continued to run it and just ran the clock out, basically. Now, for Seattle, Jackson Smith-Njigba, 9 catches, 72 yards, no touchdowns. A lot of catches, not too many yards per catch, but still led the team by far. Nobody else had more than 3 catches. Charbonnet had 2 catches for 12 yards, so he had a total of 122 yards on offense. Now for Carolina, man, the 2 running backs led the team in receptions with 3. And Chuba Hubbard had 3 catches for 6 yards. Rico Dowdle, 3 catches for 4 yards. That's just terrible. The longest reception in this game for the Carolina Panthers was 8 yards. That was by Jalen Coker, had 2 catches for 8 yards each. It was total 2 catches for 16 yards. And Chuba Hubbard had 3 catches for 6 yards, right? But one of those was for 8 yards. That means his other 2 catches for -2 yards. They had nothing going in the passing game. Seattle just shut them down completely. Really a pretty good defense they have. Not pretty good, really good defense that Seattle has. And it really made up for the fact that their offense, wasn't running at high efficiency, though they did have a good running game. But the defense definitely put Carolina in their place. All right, let's look at some of the numbers for Seattle. Passing yards in a single season, Sam Darnold was in 10th. He did have 147 yards, not that much, but enough to pass Matt Hasselbeck, who in 2003 had 3,841. Now Sam Darnold moves into 9th place all-time with 3,850 yards. Already, in only his first season, already in the 9th spot all-time in passing yards in a single season for the Seattle Seahawks. And he's definitely going to even move up farther than that because he doesn't need but 116 yards to move up one more spot, and 200 yards he'll just jump way up this list. So first season, and he's done quite well. He really was an iffy player. I didn't know what to think because I thought he kind of had a really good situation in Minnesota, but they let him go, and Seattle picked him up, and I didn't know how to take him, and I think he's been a pretty decent quarterback for them. Now, on a career level, rushing yards, Kenneth Walker had 51 yards. He was 10th all-time. Now, with those 51 yards, he now has 3,458 yards rushing in his career with the Seattle Seahawks, which is good enough to move him into 9th all-time in that category. Definitely has a chance to catch Chris Carson in this upcoming game. Kenneth Walker, again, in rushing touchdowns, he's 5th, but Zach Charbonnet now needed 1 touchdown to move into a tie for 10th, and he got it. So he now has 19 rushing touchdowns to move into a tie with David Sims, 10th all-time in rushing touchdowns for the Seattle Seahawks with 19. Kenneth Walker has 29, so they're both on this list. Zach Charbonnet, though, has been on the team one less year. All right, next game. These next couple of games won't take quite as long because there's not as much to say about the games. This next game is the Arizona Cardinals versus Cincinnati. Arizona went into Cincinnati and got clobbered. Cincinnati wins the game 37-14. And really, the game was all Cincinnati pretty much the entire way. It just was an ugly game. I think Arizona's just ready to get this season over with. So let's look at just some of the player numbers. Jacoby Brissett, 21 completions on 37 attempts, 212 yards. I think teams have finally started figuring him out a little bit. Not a bad game. Only 5.7 yards per attempt. That's where it's been going down. He's not been having these 300-yard games anymore. Teams have figured out how to play that. 2 touchdowns, though, for him. No interceptions. Was sacked 4 times. And he had a quarterback rating of 91.3. Now, Joe Burrow had a great game. 24 completions on 31 attempts for 305 yards. Almost 10 yards per attempt. 2 touchdowns. No interceptions. Had a quarterback rating of 129.1. Joe Flacco came in a little bit in the end of the game. 3 completions for 5 attempts for him. Now in the running department, and this has really hurt Arizona, they can't keep a running back, and they'll be happy to see. Hopefully, I don't know if Connor will come back, but they've got Benson as well. We'll see what they do. They might even pick up a running back in the draft or free agency. Michael Carter led Arizona with 7 carries for 29 yards, 4.14 yards a carry. And that was it. 13 carries for the team, 42 yards rushing for Arizona. That's it. 13 carries, 42 yards. I mean, they were losing the game almost from the get-go. Chase Brown for Cincinnati, 22 carries for 101 yards, 4.6 yards a carry, 2 touchdowns. So a really nice game for him. And he was dominated in the running department for the team. 22 of the 35 attempts were by Chase Brown. I mean, the backup running backs had 3 apiece. So that tells you something. For some reason, Joe Flacco ran the ball 4 times while he was out there for that little bit for 2 yards. I don't know why he's out there running around. Trey McBride led Arizona with 10 catches for 76 yards and a touchdown. So that's really helping his numbers. And, they tried to get him the ball 13 times. Him and Michael Wilson. Michael Wilson had 5 catches on 10 targets, though. 5 catches, 89 yards, and a touchdown for him. After that, no one had more than 2 catches. So really, Jacoby Brissett was looking either for McBride or Wilson. That was about it. Now for Cincinnati, this ball got spread around all over the place, but Jamar Chase did have 7 receptions for 60 yards, and he had 2 touchdowns. So big game for him. Nobody else had more than 4. And for the team, 11 different players caught a pass in this game. The ball was thrown to 12 different players, but 11 of them had caught the pass. So that's how much they spread that ball around. Now for Arizona this season, Trey McBride with 10 receptions jumped from 6th spot in most receptions in a single season to number 1 with 119 receptions. DeAndre Hopkins held the record, which he set in 2020 with 115. Trey McBride broke that now with 119. So good for him. Unfortunately, their team just has not had a season that you'd really want to have when you're racking up that many receptions. All right, another game. I don't know if it's the last game or not, but we'll do another game here. This is another game where 2 teams out of the playoffs. New Orleans Saints, Tennessee Titans. New Orleans Saints went into Nissan Stadium in Nashville and beat Tennessee 34-26. Pretty good game between these two. New Orleans just came out swinging the second half and came back to win the game. They were losing 20-10 at halftime, but tied the game up and then ended up pulling out and winning the game overall 34-26. All right, looking at some of the numbers. New Orleans Saints put up 423 yards of offense. Tennessee, 336. Not bad for either one in this game. Let's look at some other numbers. Pretty close all the way around. Looking at the quarterbacks, here's the big difference. Tyler Schuff, I think he'll be the quarterback for the Saints. He seems pretty decent. 22 completions on 27 attempts. That's only 5 incompletions. 133 yards. 12.3 yards an attempt. That's a decent number. 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. Quarterback rating of 142.7. Really impressive. Cameron Ward, 21 completions on 40 attempts. So that's just over 50%. 251 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. Sacked 4 times, had a quarterback rating of 88.6, which, is a little bit better than average. In the running department, Audric Esteem, 14 carries, 94 yards to lead the team by far. 14 of the 23 carries the team had. That's 6.7 yards a carry, 32-yard touchdown he ran for. So he had a touchdown as well of 32 yards. Now, Tony Pollard, another good game, not 100 yards, but 18 carries for 85 yards. That's 4.7 yards a carry. That's really good. No touchdowns there. And then Cameron Ward had 2 carries for 10 yards. For the Saints, Chris Olave's really had one of his better seasons, 8 catches for 119 yards and a touchdown. Really has been their best receiver. Nobody else had more than 4 catches in this game. Now, Juwan Johnson had 4 catches, the tight end, 4 catches for 95 yards. That's really impressive for the tight end. For Tennessee, again, no one had more than 4 catches. Kamara Dickey, 4 catches for 55 yards. And Elik Ayamanar, 4 catches for 37 yards and a touchdown. Okonkwo for Tennessee also had 3 catches for 55 yards and a touchdown. So those were the 2 touchdown passes. All right. Now looking at the only number to look at is Chris Olave this season with 8 more catches. Got to 100 receptions this season. Very good for him. So he had 92. He was in 9th spot all time with 8 more. He's at 100, which puts him into 4th all time in receptions in a single season for the New Orleans Saints. Now, Michael Thomas holds the top 3 spots, including the NFL record with 149, which he did in 2019. All right. Let's do this last game because it was a big game. This was between the Jacksonville Jaguars and the Indianapolis Colts. Unfortunately for Indianapolis, they realized they weren't even going to make the playoffs because of the game the day before. But they still put up a big fight. You know, it's difficult to beat a team 2 times in a single season. The Jaguars had beat them in Jacksonville earlier in this season. Actually, not that many weeks ago. So they go in, Jacksonville goes into the Indianapolis, and it was a dogfight, but the Colts ended up losing this game to the Jaguars 23-17. I mean, and the Jaguars really dominated this game and just kept making mistakes. Some of them just incredible. Jacksonville led 21 first downs to 16 for Indianapolis. Jacksonville had 370 net yards to 204 for Indianapolis. Rushing, Jacksonville 121 rushing yards net, 69 for Indianapolis. Passing net yards 249 to 135. So you can see they just dominated in all kinds of categories. Third down efficiency, 7 of 14 for 50% for the Jacksonville, 4 of 11 for 36% for Indianapolis, and just all the way around. Jacksonville had the ball for over 32 minutes to less than 28 for Indianapolis. Now, looking at the quarterbacks, neither one was that impressive, and mostly because of the interception for Trevor Lawrence. But 23 completions on 37 attempts for Trevor Lawrence for 263 yards. That's 7 yards per attempt, 1 interception, a quarterback rating of 72.2. Phillip Rivers, 17 completions on 30 attempts for only 147 yards, 4.9 yards per attempt, 1 touchdown and an interception. Sacked a couple of times, had a quarterback rating of 66.9. Those interceptions really hurt your quarterback rating if you don't have any touchdowns. Even though Phillip Rivers did have a touchdown, but his was just not as many completions. The percentage wasn't that high, and the yards per attempt was so low. Now, Travis Etienne had a pretty decent game. The running game was pretty good for Jacksonville. Travis Etienne, 17 carries for 76 yards, 4.47 yards a carry. Trevor Lawrence ran the ball 8 times for 26 yards and 2 touchdowns. That's the key. 2 touchdowns rushing for him. DJ Dallas, who they picked up before last week's game, had 2 carries for 21 yards. One was a huge first down carry. And LaQuint Allen only had 1 carry for 3 yards in the game. Jonathan Taylor, they held him in check again, the Jaguars did. He had 50-plus yards, a little over 50 yards at halftime. He ended the game with 70. He had 21 carries for 70 yards, 3.3 yards a carry. He did have a touchdown rushing, which was a big one for him and the team at the time. Now, receiving, again, Parker Washington, 8 catches, 115 yards. Other teams can consistently pay attention to Myers and Thomas, and Parker Washington is reaping the benefit of that. Parker Washington had 8 catches on 10 targets. Jacoby Myers, 6 catches, 39 yards. One was huge. Trevor Lawrence was being pressured, just kind of threw the ball. He threw it in the only spot that the receiver could catch it. The defender was all over Myers, threw it near the ground on the sideline. It wasn't even a first down. It put him 10 yards closer, though. They were only a yard away from a first down with that catch, and then on fourth down, they made the first down. But what an incredible catch, incredible throw, just amazing. Now for Indianapolis, the longest reception was Josh Downs for 18 yards in this game. Tyler Warren had 5 catches for 43 yards to lead the team. Nobody had more than 3 after that. All right, now let's look at some of these numbers in this game. For Jacksonville, Trevor Lawrence had 263 yards passing. He now has 3,752 yards this season in passing, which puts him all the way up into 6th spot all time for the Jacksonville Jaguars. He won't probably even pass his own record. His best is 4,100 yards, but Blake Bortles holds the record with over 4,400 yards, so he won't get there. But we'll see how much more he gets in this game next week. Now, Trevor Lawrence, again, this season was sacked a couple of times, which puts him at now 39, ties him for 9th place all time with Mark Brunell in sacks. Not a good year for him in sacks. This is the first year he's made the top 10 in sacks for the Jacksonville Jaguars in a single season. Mark Brunell and Blake Bortles and David Garrard are the only people on this list other than Blaine Gabbert, who was terrible quarterback for them, for anybody. Blake Bortles, too. Now, in career-wise, in total touchdowns, Trevor Lawrence had another 2 touchdowns, rushing, that is. So he now has a total of 23 touchdowns in his career with the Jaguars, which is good enough to put him into 8th place all time in total touchdowns for the Jaguars in his career with them. That's impressive, really. Travis Etienne's also on this list with 32, but he didn't have any touchdowns. Now, they're both miles away from Maurice Jones-Drew, who holds the record with 81 total touchdowns for the Jaguars. Also in his career, Cam Little had 11 points in this game. Man, he was good. He made every field goal, every extra point. He kicked a 53-yarder, was one of them. So another one over 40 yards as well. But he had 11 points in this game. He now has a total of 237 points for the Jacksonville Jaguars, which is good enough now for 8th place all time. He passed James Stewart. And that'll be as far as he gets this year. Next year, he'll have to worry about passing some other players. All right, Indianapolis Colts. So Jonathan Taylor, like I said, he had 70 yards in this game, which was good enough to move him into 4th all-time now with 1,559 yards this season rushing. That's 4th best. He holds the record for the Indianapolis Colts with 1,811. So he's not going to catch his own record, but with another 100 yards, he'll pass Eric Dickerson to move into 3rd place all time. This is a chart here. Jonathan Taylor's at the top, and now he's on here again. He's on the list 3 times. Edgar and James is on it 4 times, and Eric Dickerson a couple of times. So you've got some, and as well as Marshall Faulk. You're talking about a bunch of Hall of Famers here. Really incredible list of players on this for the Indianapolis Colts in the running department. Now in rushing touchdowns this season, with another rushing touchdown, Jonathan Taylor now has 18 rushing touchdowns to tie his record, which he had set in 2021 of 18 rushing touchdowns. So he has a chance going into next week to break his record of 18 rushing touchdowns in a single season. He leads the NFL in that category as well. All right, that is a wrap. I know we covered a lot of games, but that way I'll be able to cover most of the games for tomorrow as well and get into the season stats, the playoff standings, scenarios, all kinds of things happening. And as we wrap it up with only one more regular season week to go and a lot of interesting numbers and records and so forth. So really looking forward to talking about it with you guys. Appreciate you listening. As I always say, you can find this podcast on YouTube at Just the Stats NFL. You'll see all the charts that I've been referring to. They'll all be listed there, as well as being able to just listen to it. You can also listen to it on YouTube or at Apple, Spotify, or whatever app you happen to listen to. Please like and subscribe. And, well, that is a wrap. That was a lot of information, but a lot of great games. Tomorrow we'll be talking about some big games as well that happened on Sunday. So with that, that is a wrap for NFL Top 10s for Monday. I'll see you tomorrow.